Yeah, well, what the hell's going on over there with this whole sugar diet thing? You're looking particularly jacked and lean.
Yeah, I've been just as always, just experimenting with stuff. And you basically kicked this whole thing off in a way because you sort of shoved me, you nudged me, you left me a message and said, if you're going to be good at sprints, I think that you should be a carb monster, and I should be able to run off of good amount of carbohydrates. And you were saying like, yeah, we can play this game and you can keto it and you can carnivore it and we can talk about how to get you the best energy on certain days. But we're really just kind of guessing and it's going to be hard to do glycolytic work. Not that the body can't do glycolytic work. Of course it can, because the body does amazing things. We don't need dietary carbohydrates to make that glucose. However, we know that it's helpful. We also know that it's helpful for lack of a better term, but just like saturation. Remember when creatine came out years ago, they talked a lot about cell volumizing and cell volumization. It sort of just, it sort of just feels like that when you eat carbohydrates. It feels like your muscle cells, it feels like your muscle glycogen stores are higher. Probably technically they probably are. And you just feel like you can be more explosive because you actually, for people that have done keto before, they'll know what I'm talking about. You actually have a little bit better leverage. It's almost like you put a blood pressure cuff on both your arms and you squeeze your arms, you get that crazy pump in your arms, and you go like bench press or something like that. It's going to feel easier. It's going to feel a little bit better because the area has some nutrients to it. And as Stan Efferding has pointed out as well, carbohydrates, they are like they're like a shuttling system, kind of helps shuttle other nutrients in there. So not only are you getting glucose in there, but you could be potentially also getting magnesium, calcium, potassium. And then what kind of advantages do those have? So you kind of like, it's kind of like when you hand somebody a jar to open it, you know, and you tried to mess with it forever and you couldn't figure it out. And then they open it and you're like, well, I softened it for you. You softened up my mind to, be more open to the idea of like, hey, maybe we should try this carb thing. And I started out with a little bit of carb cycling. And then it wasn't too long after that I started to hear Cole Robinson talking about this idea of sugar fasting.
Yeah, well, it's a two-way street because the first time I ever did a keto diet years and years ago was actually inspired by you. So I'm fired up that I could kind of tip the first domino that led to you ultimately going down this new experiment with the sugar diet. And there's a couple things that you mentioned that I want to get to. But first of all, I'm in complete agreement about leveraging carbohydrates for performance and physique. I've always been of the philosophy that building a diet around carbs for those primarily concerned with physique and performance, that's the way to go. Carbohydrates are going to be our body's preferential fuel source. And like you said, there's other benefits in that carbohydrates can be stored as glycogen. They can be shuttled into the muscle. And as you get that insulin release, it's bringing with it amino acids, electrolytes, bringing water, volumizing the muscle. You're getting those big full pumps, which, like you said, can provide leverage from a strength standpoint. And simply put, it's objectively true that we can produce more force when our glycogen stores are full. So for this reason, I've always been a fan of carbohydrate-based diets. Now, that's not to say that other sorts of diets don't have value. And that's a big thing I want to talk about with you is just sort of being open-minded, right? I think there's just so much dogma as it pertains to nutrition and more so than other realms. Like, there's some dogma when it comes to training and other aspects of fitness in general. But why do you think it is that with nutrition, there just seems to be so much tribalism and dogmatism, and it's this is the way we need to do it, and anything that goes against this, they're wrong, right?
I think for some reason, well, not for some reason, you're judging somebody else's life, is ultimately what you're doing. When you're judging their nutritional protocol, you're kind of judging the way that they keep their bedroom. You're judging the way that they live their life. They're judging many aspects of it, and all the way to the point where I had a friend I was chatting with the other day, and their dog is like way overweight. And we just got in a conversation. I was trying to be sensitive because I didn't want to offend them, but I was like, who feeds this dog? you know? And same thing with your children, right? And that could be offensive to people too. Who's feeding these children? Who's going to the grocery store? Who's buying these foods? Who's buying the frozen pizza and the ice cream and so forth? So I think sometimes it feels like an attack, when somebody is questioning your nutrition. And then, to take it a step further, in the kind of the world that we're in and being in fitness and stuff, you have doctors and PhDs and you have many different people talking about many different types of diet. And so you also get these people that built a career off of talking about protein, or built a career talking about carbs, or built a career talking about the war on carbs. And then they feel that that's the hill that they have to die on. But I'm not willing to die on just one hill. I want to go on a bunch of different hills and see what else is around. Because when you get to that higher position, if you keep examining stuff and you keep an open mind, I think that you'll be able to continually see better, rather than just kind of staying on that ground floor of just being like, this is my idea. I believe in, and some people come at me and they are frustrated, like, how come you don't just have a well-balanced diet? And it's like, well, I think we're pretty far out of position to try to share with people that they need a well-balanced diet for weight loss. They easily could. And I actually was just thinking the other day, I was like, I should just put out a video that says, this is the starting point for some of you. Like some of you that are really heavy, like, why don't we just see if you can have your fats be under 100 every day for a little while? Why don't we see if we can just get rid of like some soda, get rid of some sugar, which, I know I'm talking about the sugar diet, but these would be examples of some things that your average person can just implement and see some profound differences. That a lot of people, as you know, can lose 20, 30, 40 pounds without a crazy dietary intervention. It could be something small. So I've always felt it's important to keep an open mind. And that is exactly how I landed on so many different things over the years. Like, I'm not concerned that much about what other people say. I'm more concerned about trying to find what I think is going to be helpful to me. And when I landed on sugar fasting, I was like, well, I should just try it, because as I listened to it more, I was like, wait a second. This guy is basically talking about just kind of having fruit and fruit juice. Well, shit, that sounds pretty healthy. Obviously, if you just run that forever, then that's not healthy, because you're not getting in enough protein and various other things. But as I started to listen to it more, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I love fruit. It's almost summertime, it's like, I can do that. The weather's nice. Like, I love that. To me, my taste buds kind of wake up to fruits and stuff like that when it gets to be hotter out. I want sweeter things. I started to try it. And I'm somebody for many years who, I love ice cream. I love pizza. Like, I always had these stupid cravings. And I can hold steady on a diet. Like, I have discipline and stuff, but that was always kind of lingering in the background. Immediately when I switched to this, I stopped eating shit in the middle of the night. And, in the middle of the night, I would eat like a Quest bar, or I'd eat like a legendary Pop-Tart or something. So it wasn't like I was reverting back to the old Smelly, who was 330 pounds. But I did still have habits that they weren't optimal. As soon as I moved to this, I'm like, oh, I've been missing out on this the whole time. But it's by flooding myself with different carbohydrates. See, I've tried this before. I've done starches and stuff like that before through bodybuilding. But bodybuilding, I was also in a caloric deficit. I was also on a treadmill a lot and stuff like that. And so I never got the feel of being like satiated and satisfied as much as I'm getting now. So to me, one of the key factors that people should be looking for when they're trying to find a diet is to try to find the diet that feels the easiest to them, but helps them still reach their goal.